Pack your things, Margaret. We need the space. My son stood in the doorway of the room where I'd slept beside his father for 43 years. The morning light caught the brass bed frame Robert had carried up these stairs the day we moved in, before David was born, before we planted the dogwood by the driveway that now touched the second-floor gutters. David didn't look at the bed. He looked at his phone. "Chloe's expecting in 6 months," he said. His wife hovered behind him in the hallway, one hand resting on her still flat stomach, the other already measuring the dimensions of my bedroom with her eyes. "We need to set up the nursery, get things ready." I sat in the reading chair by the window, the one Robert reupholstered himself in 1987 when the original fabric finally gave out. The worn velvet held the shape of his back. The weight of all those Sunday mornings with the newspaper spread across his lap. "This is the master bedroom," I said. "Not a question, just a fact." "Right." David shifted his weight. "Which is why we need it. We're going to be parents, Mum. We need room to grow. You're just one person now." Just one person. The phrase settled into my chest like something heavy and cold. Chloe stepped forward. She'd been living here for 8 months, ever since their apartment lease ended, and David suggested it was silly to pay rent when you have all this space. She smiled at me with the same patient expression she used when explaining why she'd moved my cookbooks to make room for her juicer, why she'd donated Robert's favourite armchair to Goodwill without asking because it didn't fit the aesthetic. "We were thinking the guest room would work perfectly for you," she said brightly. "It's cosy, and it has that nice view of the side yard. The side yard where Robert and I had planned to put in raised garden beds before his heart gave out 3 years ago. The beds we never built. The space Chloe now wanted to pave over for additional parking." "When?" I asked. "Soon as possible." David finally looked up from his phone. "We've already started getting quotes for renovation. The whole second floor needs updating anyway. New paint, new carpet, probably knock out this wall." He gestured at the wall where Robert's diploma from the community college hung beside our wedding photo to make the nursery bigger, more open concept. I looked at my hands, 74 years old, knuckles swollen from arthritis that made it hard to open jam jars, harder still to hold a pen for more than a few minutes. But my mind was clear, sharp. I thought of the safe in the basement, the one David didn't know about, tucked behind the old furnace in a crawl space Robert had finished himself. The documents inside, signed 3 months ago on a Tuesday afternoon while David was at work and Chloe was at her pottery class. "All right?" I said. The words came out calm, almost placid. David blinked. "All right, I'll move to the guest room." The relief on his face was immediate and unmistakable. He'd been prepared for resistance, for tears, for the kind of scene his wife had probably warned him about. Emotional old woman, can't accept change, stuck in the past, great. He was already backing toward the door. Yeah, great, Mum. Thanks for being reasonable about this. Reasonable. Chloe touched my shoulder as she passed, the same absent gesture you'd give a piece of furniture you were planning to rearrange. We really appreciate your flexibility, Margaret. This is going to be so good for everyone. Fresh start. They left me sitting in Robert's chair. Through the window I could see the dogwood. In 2 weeks it would bloom. The same pale pink flowers that appeared every April like clockwork. Robert used to bring me a branch to put in a vase on my nightstand before the arthritis made climbing ladders impossible for him too. I sat there until the sun shifted and the room filled with the golden afternoon light that Robert always said made everything look like a painting. Then I stood up slowly, my knees protesting, and walked to the closet. Behind my winter coats, behind the box of Robert's sweaters I still hadn't been able to give away, there was a loose panel in the wall. I pressed it gently and it swung inward. Inside was a small leather folder. I took it out and sat back down in the chair. The documents were crisp, official. Revocable Living Trust, the header read. Grantor, Margaret Evelyn Hayes. Trustee, Margaret Evelyn Hayes. Successor trustee, Leo James Hayes, my grandson. David's son from his first marriage, 28 years old, a paralegal at a firm downtown. The only person in my family who still asked me how I was doing and waited for the real answer. I ran my finger along the notary's seal. Mr. Farnsworth had been Robert's lawyer for 30 years. He'd looked at me over his reading glasses when I'd called to make the appointment, his office still smelling of old books and furniture polish, and asked me one question. "Are you sure, Margaret?" I'd been sure. I folded the documents back into the leather folder and returned it to its hiding place. Then I started packing my things for the guest room, moving slowly, methodically, like someone who had already accepted defeat. The guest room had been Robert's study once, before his hands got too shaky to work on his model ships. It still smelt faintly of wood glue and varnish, though Chloe had cleared out his workbench months ago to make room for her yoga mat and meditation cushions. I unpacked my clothes into the narrow dresser by the window. 4 drawers instead of 8. No master bathroom, just the hall bath I'd now be sharing with David and Chloe. The walls were beige, where the master bedroom had been the soft blue Robert and I had painted together the summer David graduated high school. From downstairs I could hear Chloe on the phone with someone, her voice bright with excitement. Complete renovation, yes, knocking out walls, new hardwood throughout, maybe even add a skylight. Planning my house like it was already hers. I sat on the edge of the single bed and thought about the afternoon 3 months ago when I'd driven to Mr. Farnsworth's office on Maple Street, the one with the green awning and the brass nameplate that always needed polishing. His secretary had given me tea in a china cup, the kind with a saucer that rattled when my hands shook. Mr. Farnsworth had come out of his office in his shirt sleeves, reading glasses perched on his nose, the same way he'd looked when Robert and I had come to him to write our wills 30 years before, Margaret. He'd taken both my hands in his. I was sorry to hear about David's situation. I'd set down the teacup carefully. Is that what we're calling it? He gestured me into his office. Dark wood panelling, law books on shelves that reached the ceiling, a window that looked out on the courthouse square where Robert and I used to take David to feed the pigeons. "Tell me what's happening," he'd said. So I did. I told him about Chloe moving in temporarily 8 months ago, about the boxes of Robert's things that disappeared when I was at my book club, about David's new habit of asking about my finances. How much was the house worth? Did I have long-term care insurance? Had I thought about selling and moving somewhere more manageable? I told him about the morning I'd overheard Chloe on the phone with her mother. She's so stubborn. I mean, it's a 5-bedroom house and she's one old woman. When is she going to accept reality? Mr. Farnsworth had listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled under his chin. "You built this house," he'd said finally. "Not a question. Robert and I. 1979. He designed it himself. Drew up the plans on graph paper at the kitchen table. And you're concerned about losing it." The words came out harder than I'd intended. Not the house itself, losing the right to decide what happens to it, to me. He'd nodded slowly. "There are options. You're still completely competent, Margaret. You have the right to protect your assets, to ensure your wishes are followed." That's when he'd explained trusts, revocable living trusts, how they worked, how they could bypass probate, protect assets, give me control over distribution, how I could name a successor trustee who would manage the property if I became incapacitated. "Who would you want as successor?" he'd asked. The answer had come immediately. Leo, David's son from his first marriage. The boy I'd taken to baseball games when his parents' divorce got ugly. The teenager who'd spent weekends at my house when he needed quiet space to study. The young man who still called me every Sunday, who remembered Robert's birthday, who'd held my hand at Robert's funeral when David was too busy handling logistics to sit beside me. Leo wouldn't take advantage, I'd said. He loved Robert. He loves this house. Mr. Farnsworth had pulled out forms. Standard documents, he'd explained. Nothing unusual, in fact, common practice for people my age. A way to ensure smooth transition, avoid family conflict, protect against exploitation. I'd signed them on a Tuesday afternoon in October. The same week, Chloe had replaced all my kitchen towels with ones that matched better, without asking which towels had been wedding gifts, which ones Robert's mother had embroidered with chickadees. The trust was legal, binding, filed with the county, but I hadn't told David, hadn't told Chloe. Insurance, I'd thought, just in case. Now, sitting on the narrow bed in the guest room, I realized the insurance policy was about to come due. Downstairs, Chloe's voice carried up through the heating vents. "The master bedroom is perfect. Southern exposure. Plenty of space for a crib and a changing table and those cute built-in shelves I saw on Pinterest. I stood up and walked to the window. The side yard looked different from this angle, smaller. The grass needed mowing. Robert would have been out there already with the push mower, the one he'd refused to replace with a riding mower because he liked the exercise, liked the smell of cut grass, liked the neat rows. That night I waited until David and Chloe went to bed before I went down to the basement. The stairs creaked in the same places they'd creaked for 40 years. I knew which boards to avoid. The safe sat behind the old furnace, tucked into the crawl space Robert had framed out with 2x4s and plywood. Inside were the trust documents, along with Robert's life insurance papers, our marriage certificate, the deed to the house. I pulled out the trust and read it again by the light of my phone. Every word, every clause. The section about successor trustee. The section about my right to amend or revoke at any time while competent. The section about what happened if someone challenged my competency. Then I took out my phone and sent a text to Leo. Can you come by this week? Need to talk. Important. His response came 3 minutes later. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Perfect. I put the documents back, locked the safe, climbed the stairs slowly, my hand tight on the railing. In the guest room, I lay in the narrow bed and listened to the sounds of my house settling around me, the furnace clicking on, the wind in the dogwood branches, Chloe's voice drifting through the wall, explaining to David how they'd repaint, refurnish, make it theirs. Make it theirs. I closed my eyes and thought about Robert's hands drawing plans on graph paper, the foundation poured in spring mud, the walls going up board by board, the day we'd moved in, and he carried me over the threshold, even though we'd been married 5 years already, even though David was 3 years old and watching from the car. This is ours, Robert had said. Yours and mine. No one can take it. I'd believed him then. I believed him still. Leo arrived the next evening carrying takeout from the Thai place Robert used to love. He set the bags on the kitchen counter and pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than necessary. You texted important, he said. That's grandma code for catastrophic. I smiled despite myself. Not catastrophic, strategic. We ate at the kitchen table, the one Robert had built from oak planks, salvaged from an old barn. Chloe had tried to get rid of it twice, calling it rustic in a way that meant ugly. She and David were out, some prenatal yoga class she'd insisted he attend. How are they treating you? Leo asked. I looked at him, really looked. He had Robert's eyes, that same steady grey that missed nothing. 28 years old and already cautious about the world, careful about trust. His mother had left when he was 6. David had remarried quickly. Chloe was wife number 3. They asked me to move out of the master bedroom. Leo set down his fork. What? They need it. For the baby. They have 4 other bedrooms. They need mine specifically. I kept my voice level. I've moved into the guest room. Grandma, I held up my hand. I need to show you something. I took him down to the basement, showed him the safe, pulled out the trust documents and handed them to him. He read in silence, his lawyer-trained eyes moving quickly over the pages. When he looked up, his face was very still. You made me successor trustee 3 months ago. Does Dad know? No. Does Chloe? Definitely not. He sat down in the basement steps, the document still in his hands. Why me? Because you loved Robert. Because you call me every Sunday. Because when you visit, you ask about my life, not just about whether I've fallen or forgotten to take my medicine. I sat beside him, my knees complaining. Because I trust you not to treat me like a piece of furniture that needs rearranging. We sat there for a long moment in the dim basement light. What do you want me to do? He asked finally. Nothing yet. I just need you to know it exists, in case. In case what? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I said, Mr. Farnsworth suggested we might want to make you co-trustee now, instead of waiting, just as a precaution. You think it's going to get worse? It wasn't a question. Upstairs, the front door open. Chloe's voice floated down, bright and cheerful. Margaret, are you home? I stood up slowly. Put those back in the safe. I'll go up. But Leo caught my arm. Grandma, if you need me any time, I'm here. I squeezed his hand once, then climbed the stairs. Chloe was in the kitchen, unpacking shopping bags, new throw pillows for the living room. Paint samples fanned across the counter like a deck of cards. Oh, good, you're here. I need your opinion. Which shade of white works better for the nursery? I'm thinking this one, Dovewing, but David likes pure white. She didn't wait for an answer, just kept talking, kept pulling things from bags. A mobile with elephants, a package of blackout curtains. I looked at the paint samples. 27 shades of white, each with its own precious name. Not one of them the soft blue Robert and I had chosen. I'm sure whichever you pick will be lovely, I said. Oh, good. She was already texting someone, probably her mother. Because the painters are coming next week. I scheduled them while you were out. Hope that's okay. They need to start with the master bedroom first, so it has time to air out before we move the furniture back in. Move the furniture back in? Well, obviously we'll need to take everything out first. Don't worry, we'll put your things in storage. We've rented a unit on Route 7, very reasonable rates. My things are in the guest room now. Right, but I mean the furniture from the master. Robert's dresser and that big bed frame. Too old-fashioned for what we're planning. We're going modern, clean lines. She was scrolling through her phone, showing me pictures from Instagram. See, like this. That bed is from Article, that dresser from West Elm. Much better feng shui. The brass bed Robert carried up the stairs. His dresser with the cigar burn from the night David was born when he'd celebrated too enthusiastically. The reading chair he'd reupholstered. Storage unit, Route 7. When were you planning to tell me this? I asked. Chloe looked up, genuinely surprised. I am telling you, right now. Before scheduling the painters. Margaret. She set down her phone with exaggerated patience. We talked about this. You agreed to move to the guest room so we could prepare for the baby. That means we need to actually prepare the room. We can't do that with all the old furniture in the way. Old furniture. Robert's hands on that dresser every morning for 43 years. His weight settling into that chair every evening. The shape of our marriage pressed into wood and fabric and brass. Old furniture. I looked at Leo standing in the basement doorway. He was watching Chloe with an expression I'd never seen before, something cold and calculating. I need to go, he said to me, ignoring Chloe entirely, but I'll call you tomorrow about that thing we discussed. After he left, Chloe returned to her paint samples. He's gotten so serious lately, not like when he was little. I didn't answer. I went upstairs to the guest room and closed the door. That night I lay in bed and listened to Chloe and David discussing paint colours through the wall. Modern whites, clean lines, fresh start, erasing Robert one furniture piece at a time. The next morning I called Mr. Farnsworth's office and made another appointment. Mr. Farnsworth's office looked exactly the same. The secretary, Mrs. Chen, brought me tea in the same china cup, but this time my hands didn't shake when I lifted it. Margaret. Mr. Farnsworth settled into his chair across from me. What's happened? I told him about the master bedroom, the guest room, the painters scheduled for next week. Robert's furniture headed for storage on Route 7. Storage I'll be paying for, I added, with my money, for my furniture, from my house. He wrote notes on a yellow legal pad, the same kind Robert used to use for his project plans. The trust we created gives you full control, he said. But as long as you're the trustee, you're also vulnerable. They could argue you're being influenced, that Leo is manipulating you. They could challenge your competency. I had my physical last month. Dr. Morrison says I'm sharp as ever. Medical competency and legal competency are different things. Your son could claim undue influence, emotional distress, age-related decline. He tapped his pen against the pad. The strongest protection would be to make Leo co-trustee now. Active co-trustee, not just successor. That way decisions about the property require both signatures. Would that protect the house? It would make it significantly harder for David or Chloe to force a sale or take control. The property would be managed by the trust, not by you personally. They couldn't claim you're incapable of managing it alone because you wouldn't be alone. Leo would have equal authority. I thought about this. What if I want to go further? Further how? What if I want to transfer full management authority to Leo? Make him the primary trustee? Mr. Farnsworth set down his pen. That's certainly possible. But Margaret, that's a significant step. You'd be giving up direct control in exchange for protection. Yes, but I built this house with my husband. I planted every tree in that yard. I chose every doorknob, every light fixture. I know what I'm doing, George. I used his first name deliberately. Robert had called him George. I'm not giving up the house. I'm protecting it and myself. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. We'll need Leo here to sign. Can you bring him in this week? I'll call him tonight. The appointment was made for Thursday, 2 days away. When I got home, Chloe was standing in my bedroom, the guest room, I corrected myself, holding my jewellery box. Oh, good, you're back. She set down the box on the narrow dresser. I was looking for your pearls, the ones Robert gave you. I thought they'd be perfect for the maternity photos we're doing next month. Kind of a family heirloom thing, you know. The pearls Robert had given me for our 25th anniversary, the ones he'd saved for 6 months to buy, picking up extra shifts at the plant. Those are mine, I said quietly. Well, obviously, but I'd just be borrowing them for photos. It's not like I'm keeping them. She laughed, that bright, empty laugh. Although, eventually they'll come to David anyway, right? When you're gone. So really they're kind of family property already. Eventually, when you're gone. Family property. I walked to the dresser and picked up the jewellery box, held it against my chest. No, I said. No? Chloe's smile flickered. No what? No, you can't borrow them. The smile vanished entirely. Margaret, they're just pearls. I'll give them right back. They're my pearls. Robert gave them to me. They're not for borrowing. You're being ridiculous. It's for one photo session, one afternoon. No! We stood there in the small room, facing each other. Chloe's face had gone hard in a way I'd never seen before. Fine. She set her hands on her hips. You know what? Fine. Keep your precious pearls. Wear them to bed for all I care. But you might want to think about the fact that David and I are the ones who are going to be taking care of you when you can't take care of yourself anymore. Might want to think about being a little more appreciative, a little more generous. She left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the window. I sat on the bed and opened the jewellery box. The pearls lay coiled in their velvet case, each one perfect and smooth. I could still see Robert's hands fastening them around my neck the night of our anniversary dinner, his fingers clumsy with the tiny clasp, his face in the mirror behind mine. That night, David knocked on my door. Mum? His voice was careful, controlled. Can we talk? I let him in. He sat in the small chair by the window, the one that had been in David's nursery before we'd moved it down here. Chloe told me about the pearls. Did she? She's upset. She was just trying to include you in the celebration. The baby is your grandchild too. The baby is very welcome. The baby can have anything I choose to give the baby when I choose to give it. David's jaw tightened. This attitude isn't helpful. What attitude? This resistance to everything. We're trying to make a home here for our family. All you do is make it difficult. I made you a home for 38 years. That was then. This is now. Things change, Mum. You need to accept that. I looked at him, really looked. At some point in the past 8 months, he'd stopped being my son and become Chloe's husband. His words, his gestures, even the way he sat, everything was performative now, rehearsed. You're right, I said. Things do change. He relaxed slightly. Good, that's good. So about the pearls. The pearls are mine. But you're right that things change. So I've made some changes. What kind of changes? Legal ones. His expression shifted, became wary. What does that mean? It means I've taken steps to protect my assets, to ensure my wishes are followed. What wishes? What assets? Mum, what are you talking about? I'm talking about this house, my house, the one your father and I built. David stood up. If you're thinking about changing your will, it's already done. The silence stretched between us. You what? I've established a trust. Leo is the trustee. This house, everything in it, goes into the trust. Not to you, not anymore. Leo. David's voice went flat. My son, from my first marriage. The one who barely comes around. He comes every month. He calls every week. He's the only one who remembers your father's birthday. You can't do this. I already have. 3 months ago. It's legal, filed, binding. David's face had gone white, then red. We'll fight this. You weren't in your right mind. You're old. You're confused. I had a physical last month. Dr. Morrison declared me completely competent. Would you like his number? This is insane. This is... Chloe and I gave up our apartment to help you. We moved in here to take care of you. I never asked you to move in. You're alone. You need help. I need dignity. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. I need respect. I need to be asked before my things are thrown away, or my furniture is put in storage, or my pearls are borrowed for photo shoots. Unfucking believable. He was pacing now, furious. We try to include you, we try to make you part of our lives, and this is how you repay us, by cutting me out of my inheritance. Your inheritance isn't yours until I'm dead. While I'm alive, this house is mine to do with as I choose. He stared at me. We'll see about that. Then he left, slamming the door even harder than Chloe had. I sat in the silence that followed and felt something strange in my chest. Not fear, relief. The silence that followed was different from the silence that had filled the house after Robert died. That silence had been grief. An absence that pressed against my ribs, that made every room too large, every surface too empty. This silence had texture, weight. It sat between me and David like something physical. When we passed in the hallway, rare now as he timed his movements to avoid mine, we didn't speak. When Chloe came home with groceries, she put them away in pointed quiet, closing cabinets just hard enough to communicate displeasure without quite slamming. I had expected this, but knowing something was coming didn't make it easier to bear. 3 days after the confrontation, I met Leo at Mr. Farnsworth's office. We sat side by side in the leather chairs while Mr. Farnsworth explained the amended trust, the co-trustee arrangement, the protections it provided. Leo signed where he was told to sign. I watched his careful signature, so much like Robert's, precise, deliberate. "This is now a binding legal document," Mr. Farnsworth said, folding the papers into a file. "Leo has equal authority over the trust assets. Any major decisions, sale, transfer, significant financial transactions require both signatures. Both of you." "What if my dad challenges it?" Leo asked. "On what grounds?" "That she wasn't competent when she created it." Mr. Farnsworth pulled out a thicker file. 3 months ago, Margaret had a complete physical with Dr. Morrison. He documented her cognitive function as excellent. Last week, when she came to me about making these amendments, I had her examined by Dr. Patricia Chen, a geriatric specialist. Also found her completely competent. We have 2 medical professionals willing to testify that Margaret Hayes is of sound mind and body. He slid papers across the desk. I saw my name at the top, saw the test scores, saw Dr. Chen's notation. Patient demonstrates excellent memory, logical reasoning, and decision-making capacity. "I came prepared," I said to Leo. He took my hand, squeezed it once. That afternoon I returned to the house and found Chloe in the master bedroom with a measuring tape and a woman I didn't recognize. They were measuring the windows, discussing curtain lengths. "Oh," Chloe said when she saw me. "Margaret, this is Denise, my decorator. We're finalizing the nursery design." The decorator smiled at me with professional politeness. "Such a beautiful room. Perfect bones, amazing light." "The painters are coming Monday," Chloe added, turning back to the windows. "We'll need you to clear out anything you still want from the closet by Sunday. Anything left we're donating." Not asking, informing. I looked around the room. At the bed where I'd slept beside Robert for 43 years. At the closet where his shirt still hung, where I could still catch the faint scent of his cologne if I pressed my face into the fabric. "I'll take care of it," I said. That night I went through Robert's things, the shirts I'd been unable to donate, the watch he'd worn every day until his hands got too swollen, the cardigan with the elbow patches he'd insisted on keeping even when it was more patch than cardigan. I packed them carefully into boxes, not for donation, for keeping. I carried them down to the basement myself, one box at a time, my knees protesting with each step. The safe held the trust documents. The crawl space held Robert's life. 2 separate spaces, both hidden, both protected. Sunday evening, David came to my room. He knocked, waited for permission. Progress, maybe. Or calculation. "Mum." He stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets. "We need to talk about this trust situation." "There's nothing to talk about." I spoke to a lawyer. He says we can challenge it. Undue influence. Leo convinced you to sign over your assets. Leo didn't convince me of anything. I convinced him. You're making a mistake. This house should stay in the family, should come to me. I'm your son.
The house will stay in the family. Leo is family. He's not your son.
I met his eyes. Neither are you. Not anymore. Not since you decided I was furniture to be rearranged. His face went hard. You'll regret this. I regret many things. This isn't one of them. After he left, I sat in the dark and listened to my house breathe around me. The furnace cycling, the refrigerator humming, the sound of Chloe's voice through the wall, sharp with frustration, though I couldn't make out the words. My phone buzzed. Leo, you okay? Yes. Want me to come over? No, but thank you for asking. They're going to fight this, you know. I know. Are you ready for that? I thought about Robert's hands on graph paper, drawing the plans for this house. I thought about carrying David as a baby through rooms that smelled of new paint and sawdust. I thought about 43 years of mornings waking beside Robert, 43 years of evenings settling into our chairs, our routines, our life. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Monday morning the painters arrived. I stayed in the guest room while they carried out Robert's dresser, the brass bed frame, the reading chair. Heard them taking the furniture down the stairs. Heard Chloe directing them to load everything into the truck headed for storage. I stood at the guest room window and watched the truck pull away. Robert's things, our life, packed into cardboard and driven to a climate-controlled unit on Route 7. But the house itself remained. The walls he'd built, the foundation he'd poured, the structure that held everything. That afternoon I received a registered letter, legal notice. David and Chloe Hayes versus Margaret Evelyn Hayes and Leo James Hayes, petition to invalidate trust, allegations of diminished capacity, undue influence, financial exploitation. I sat at the kitchen table and read it 3 times. Then I called Mr. Farnsworth. We expected this, he said calmly. We're ready. What happens now? Now we prove they're wrong. The weeks that followed had a strange quality, like living in a house where half the rooms belonged to someone else. Chloe painted the master bedroom, soft grey, she said, modern. She hung blackout curtains and assembled the crib she'd ordered online. Sometimes I'd pass the open door and see her arranging stuffed animals on shelves, humming to herself, completely absorbed. She never invited me to see the finished room. David avoided me entirely now. We lived in the same house but on different planets. He came home late, left early. On weekends, he and Chloe went to prenatal classes, furniture stores, visits with her family. I was a ghost in my own home. But I had work to do. Mr. Farnsworth had been clear about what we needed: medical documentation, financial records, proof of competency, evidence that the trust had been my idea, my decision, my action. I met with Dr. Morrison, who wrote a detailed letter about my cognitive function. Sharp as a tack, he'd said, shaking his head. Your son should be ashamed. I met with Dr. Chen again for another evaluation, memory tests, logic puzzles, questions about current events, about my life, about my decisions. She documented everything with clinical precision. I gathered bank statements showing I'd managed my own finances without assistance. Bills paid on time, investments managed sensibly. No signs of confusion or exploitation. Leo helped me organise it all into binders. We sat at his apartment, spreading papers across his kitchen table, building the case for my competency, one document at a time. "This feels insane," he said at one point, looking at the stack of evidence, "that we have to prove you're capable of making your own decisions. Your father wants the house. He wants to sell it. He and Chloe have been looking at new construction in Maple Ridge, 4 bedrooms, modern kitchen, attached garage." He tapped a pen against the table. "They need the money from this house for the down payment." So that was it. Not the nursery, not needing space. They needed the equity. "How do you know?" I asked. Chloe told me, last month, before all this. She thought I'd be on their side. Said the house was too much for you to maintain, that selling it was the practical choice, that Dad deserved to benefit from his inheritance now instead of waiting. Now, instead of waiting for me to die. Yeah. Leo's face was grim. That's what she meant. The court date was set for mid-April, 6 weeks away. Mr. Farnsworth filed our response, attaching all the medical documentation, all the financial records, a letter from Leo detailing my involvement in his life, my clear and consistent decision-making. The petition alleged I was confused, manipulated, financially exploited. Our response was clinical and thorough. Here is the evidence that Margaret Hayes is competent. Here is the proof that she made this decision freely. Here is the documentation that she is managing her affairs with clarity and purpose. I read it and felt something shift in my chest. Not fear anymore, determination. 3 weeks before the court date, I received a visit from a court-appointed investigator, a woman named Sandra Michaels, who sat in my guest room and asked me questions for 2 hours. Why did I create the trust? To protect my assets and ensure my wishes were followed. Why Leo as trustee? Because I trust him. Because he respects me. Did anyone pressure me? No. This was my decision. Did I understand the legal implications? Yes. I consulted an attorney. I was medically evaluated. I knew exactly what I was signing. Was I afraid of my son? No. I was disappointed in him. She wrote everything down in a small notebook, her face neutral and professional. At the end, she asked, "Do you regret creating the trust?" No. Even though it's caused conflict with your son? The conflict existed before the trust just made it visible. She closed her notebook. "Mrs. Hayes, I've done 40 of these evaluations in the past 2 years. Most of them involve family members trying to take advantage of elderly people who are genuinely confused or vulnerable." She looked at me directly. "You are neither confused nor vulnerable. You're one of the most clear-headed people I've met." Will you say that in your report? I will. 2 weeks before the hearing, Chloe confronted me in the kitchen. You know this is going to destroy your relationship with David. I was making tea. I didn't turn around. David destroyed our relationship when he told me to pack my things. We needed the space. You needed the equity. Silence. Then Leo told you? Yes. So what? We've been supporting you, living here, helping with maintenance, making sure you're not alone. We deserve something in return. I turned to face her. You moved in because your lease ended and you didn't want to pay rent. You haven't helped with maintenance. I still mow the lawn myself. And I was alone for 3 years before you arrived. I managed fine. Her face flushed. You're being incredibly selfish. You have more space than you need. More money than you need, and you're hoarding it all out of spite. I'm protecting what I built. You didn't build it alone. Robert built it, and he's dead. This isn't his house anymore, it's yours. And when you're dead, it'll be David's. That's how inheritance works, not necessarily. The court will see what you're doing. An old woman, confused and manipulated by a grandson who barely visits. They'll give Dad control. They'll invalidate the trust. And then we'll sell this place, and you can go live in one of those nice senior communities with the other old people who can't take care of themselves. She left her dishes in the sink and walked out. I stood there in Robert's kitchen, in the house we built, and felt my hands shaking. Not from fear, from fury. I picked up the phone and called Leo. We're going to win this, I said. Whatever it takes, we're going to win. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood panelling, fluorescent lights, rows of empty benches, and one table where David sat with his lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in a navy suit who kept whispering in his ear. Chloe sat behind them, her hand resting on her now visible belly, 6 months along. She'd dressed carefully, soft sweater, minimal makeup, the picture of a concerned daughter-in-law worried about her confused mother-in-law. Leo sat beside me at our table. Mr. Farnsworth on my other side, his files stacked precisely, his reading glasses perched on his nose. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Patricia Ruiz, according to the nameplate on the bench. She looked at the assembled parties with an expression that suggested she'd seen this exact scenario many times before. This is a petition to invalidate a revocable living trust, she said. Created by Margaret Hayes, with Leo Hayes as successor trustee, now co-trustee, the petitioners allege diminished capacity and undue influence. She looked at David's lawyer. Counsel, proceed. The lawyer stood. Your Honour, we believe Margaret Hayes was not of sound mind when she created this trust. She's 74 years old, recently widowed, isolated, vulnerable to manipulation. The trust transfers substantial assets, including the family home valued at approximately $800,000, away from her biological son and into the control of a grandson who rarely visited until recently. We believe this represents undue influence and financial exploitation. Mr. Farnsworth stood. Your Honour, we have substantial documentation proving Mrs. Hayes was and remains completely competent. Medical evaluations from 2 physicians. Financial records showing independent management of her affairs. Testimony from the court investigator. This trust was Mrs. Hayes's decision, made freely and with full understanding of its implications. The judge nodded. I've reviewed the preliminary filings. Let's hear from the petitioners first. Mr. Hayes? David stood, took the witness stand. His lawyer walked him through it. How long had I lived alone? 3 years. Had he noticed any decline? Yes. Forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty managing household tasks. When had Leo entered the picture? About 4 months ago. Started visiting more frequently, spending time alone with me. When had he learned about the trust? 3 weeks ago. I'd told him in anger. And how did that make you feel? The lawyer asked. Shocked, hurt. David looked at the judge. My mother and I have always been close. I've been trying to help her since my father died. We moved in to support her, to make sure she wasn't alone. And then to find out she'd signed everything away to my son. He paused, seemingly overcome. It didn't make sense. It wasn't like her. Chloe was called next. She testified about my isolation, my resistance to change, my attachment to objects and spaces that prevented me from moving forward. How they'd tried to help me downsize, to prepare for a more manageable living situation, but I'd become defensive and paranoid. She accused us of trying to steal from her, Chloe said, her voice soft and sad. She hid things, got angry when we tried to help. It was like she didn't trust us anymore, didn't trust anyone except Leo. The lawyer showed photographs. The master bedroom before and after. Before, cluttered with old furniture, dark, dated. After, clean, modern, perfect for a nursery. We were trying to help her let go, Chloe said, to move forward, but she couldn't. I watched this performance from my table. Leo's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. Then it was our turn. Mr. Farnsworth called Dr. Morrison first. He testified about my excellent cognitive function, my clear decision-making capacity, my independent management of my health and finances. Then Dr. Chen. She went through the evaluation she'd conducted, the test scores, the clinical observations. Margaret Hayes demonstrates cognitive function well above average for her age. She shows no signs of confusion, diminished capacity, or susceptibility to manipulation. Then Sandra Michaels, the court investigator. She testified about her interview with me, about my clear understanding of the trust, my articulate reasons for creating it. Did you find any evidence of undue influence? Mr. Farnsworth asked. None whatsoever. Mrs. Hayes made this decision independently, with full understanding of the consequences and her competency. Mrs. Hayes is one of the most mentally sharp individuals I've evaluated. She understood every legal implication of the trust. She could articulate her reasoning clearly. She showed no signs of confusion or manipulation. Then Leo testified about calling me every week for 10 years, about visiting monthly, about being present at my husband's funeral when David was handling logistics, about helping me with household tasks, not because I couldn't manage them, but because that's what family does. Did you convince her to create this trust? Mr. Farnsworth asked. No, she told me about it after she'd already done it. She made the decision on her own. And why do you think she made that decision? David's lawyer objected. Calls for speculation, sustained, Mr. Farnsworth rephrased. Did your grandmother explain her reasoning? Yes. She said she wanted to protect the house she'd built with my grandfather. She said she didn't trust my father and his wife to respect her wishes. Finally, I took the stand. Mr. Farnsworth walked me through it gently. When did I create the trust? October 15th, 3 months after Chloe moved in. Why? To protect my assets and ensure my wishes were followed. Who suggested it? I did. I called Mr. Farnsworth's office. Did anyone pressure me? No. Did I understand what I was signing? Yes, every word. Would I make the same decision again? Yes, without hesitation. Then David's lawyer cross-examined me. Mrs. Hayes, you've testified that you created this trust independently, but isn't it true that you consulted with your grandson before making this decision? No, I consulted with my attorney. I told Leo after it was finalized, but he's a paralegal. He works at a law firm. Are you saying he never advised you? He didn't know about it until it was done. Mrs. Hayes, isn't it true that you were upset about moving to the guest room, that you created this trust out of anger? I created this trust out of caution. My son and his wife had made it clear they viewed the house as theirs to control. I wanted to ensure my wishes would be followed. So you admit you were angry. I was disappointed enough to cut your son out of his inheritance. I didn't cut him out. I ensured the property would be managed according to my wishes, with someone I trust making decisions if I become incapable of doing so. And you trust Leo more than your own son? Yes. The word hung in the courtroom. Why? Because Leo treats me like a person, my son treats me like furniture. The lawyer pressed on, but I'd said what needed saying. Judge Ruiz called a 15-minute recess. Then she returned and delivered her ruling. I've reviewed all the evidence. The medical evaluations are clear and consistent. Margaret Hayes is completely competent. The financial records show independent management. The court investigator found no evidence of undue influence. The trust was created after proper legal consultation, with full understanding of its implications. She looked at David. This petition is denied. The trust stands. The gavel came down. I sat very still. Leo's hand found mine again. we'd won. But in the row behind us, I could hear Chloe crying. David's face had gone blank, unreadable. Mr. Farnsworth leaned close. "It's over, Margaret. You're protected." Protected, but still alone. I stayed in the house for 6 more weeks. The master bedroom remained a nursery I never entered. Chloe and David moved through the house like ghosts themselves now, silent and separate. We didn't speak. We passed each other in hallways and looked away. The house Robert and I built had become a mausoleum for a family that no longer existed. In May, Leo helped me move to Greenwood Commons, a women's co-housing community 20 minutes away. 12 women, all over 65, all choosing to live together rather than alone, shared common spaces, private apartments, a garden where residents grew vegetables and flowers. My apartment had 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a living room with windows that faced east toward the morning sun. It wasn't the house Robert built, but it was mine. David and Chloe moved out a week after I left. I heard about it from Leo. They'd found a place in Maple Ridge after all. A new construction house with an attached garage and a HOA that maintained the lawn. They'd sold the idea without selling the asset. The house on Elmwood stood empty for a month while Leo and I worked with Mr. Farnsworth to finalize the trust's charitable designation. The house would eventually, after my death, after Leo's trusteeship ended, become transitional housing for women veterans, a place for women who'd served and now needed somewhere to rebuild. Robert would have liked that. He'd always believed the house should serve a purpose. On a Saturday in June, I returned to Elmwood one last time. Leo drove me. We walked through rooms that echoed now, emptied of furniture, stripped of the life that had filled them for 40 years. In the master bedroom, the nursery furniture was gone. Chloe must have taken it. The walls were still that soft grey. The windows still had blackout curtains. I stood in the centre of the room and remembered Robert carrying the brass bed frame up the stairs, remembered David as a baby sleeping in the bassinet beside our bed, remembered 43 years of mornings waking beside Robert, evening settling into our routines. "You okay?" Leo asked from the doorway. Yes. I turned to face him. This was my life, but it's not my life anymore. We walked through the rest of the house, the kitchen where Robert had taught David to make pancakes, the living room where we'd opened Christmas presents, hosted birthday parties, watched David grow up and move away, the basement where Robert's things still sat in boxes, waiting. "What do you want to do with all this?" Leo gestured at the boxes, at the safe in the crawl space. "Leave it. It's part of the house now. Let the women who come after find it. Let them know someone lived here, someone built this with love." Outside, I stood in the yard and looked at the dogwood. It was blooming, those pale pink flowers like always. In another week they'd fall, carpeting the grass with petals. I thought about Robert's hands planting that sapling, about the decades it had taken to grow tall enough to reach the second floor. About how some things take time to become what they're meant to be. Leo touched my shoulder. Ready? Yes. We drove back to Greenwood Commons, to my small apartment with its eastern windows, to the garden where I'd already planted tomatoes and herbs in a raised bed the other residents had helped me build. That evening I sat on my small patio and watched the sunset. One of my neighbours, a woman named Ruth, who'd been a nurse for 40 years, brought me tea and sat down beside me. How was it, she asked, going back? Sad, necessary, both. We sat in comfortable silence. Around us the sounds of the community, someone laughing in the common room, music from an open window, the quiet murmur of women who'd chosen to build something together. I thought I'd feel like I'd lost, I said eventually. The house, my son, the life I built. Did you? No. I feel like I learned something. What's that? That dignity isn't a gift someone gives you, it's something you claim for yourself, even when it costs you everything else. Ruth sipped her tea, especially then. My phone buzzed. A text from Leo. Talked to Dad today. He wanted your new address. I didn't give it to him. Hope that's okay. I texted back. That's fine, thank you. Maybe someday David would understand. Maybe not. Either way, the choice had been mine to make. I finished my tea and went inside, unpacked another box, hung Robert's diploma on the wall of my small living room, placed our wedding photo on the bookshelf, started writing this story. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself, the one who always says yes, who always accommodates, who's become furniture in your own life, I want you to know something. Your silence isn't kindness, it's self-abandonment. Your boundaries aren't selfishness, they're the foundation of dignity. It's never too late to say no. It's never too late to protect what you've built, what you value, who you are. They will call you difficult, unreasonable, selfish, confused. Let them. You'll know the truth. And someday, sitting in your own space on your own terms, you'll feel what I feel now. Not triumph, not vindication, peace.